I read from chapter 4 by Charles Linton, circa 1855. The highest of all attainments is to know God. This alone his own privilege. The second great attainment is to know thyself and thy connection with thy Father. To know thyself thou must use his wisdom, for to comprehend requireth superiority. The third great attainment and second great privilege is to know and comprehend thy Father's creation. O strive through thy Father's aid to know thyself. Strive to comprehend thy spiritual privileges. Fear not to ask for aid, wherein thou must have it before thou doest the first true step. Thou seest that a sense of want leadeth unto that which giveth true knowledge, even the favor of God. Be humble, and thou canst sink deep. Be exalted with pride, and thou canst not get below the surface. Be simple and honest, true and good, and all will be well. He can only fall by a blind dependence upon himself. If he lean not upon God, who is all strength, he becomes weakened and falls. The first in error is a falling off from the truth obtained. The light within regulates all in connection with the spirit in which it is placed. If God and truth are high, error and ignorance are low. And as the spirit of man favors the one he raises, or as the other he falls. The greatest fall of man is sinning against the light of God placed within his own spirit. To sin against God's light is to knowingly violate. If a man knoweth a truth that which his Father requireth, yet of himself goeth directly opposite thereunto, great is the fall of that man. God doeth not change, neither can he know wrath, and man's individuality alone must carry the burden of his transgression. Being a child of God and perfected, the constant companion of God, it is a fearful thing knowingly cast censure and action upon the kind one who in purest love bestowed the power which is thus perverted. To have thy high position in the heavens, thou must have on earth the essence of light and darkness within thee. To rule, thou must comprehend what thou art ruling. Thou canst not comprehend that which thou hast not felt known of thyself. To rule over chaos, thou must have chaotic powers represented within thyself. Hence, the body which belongeth to the denser creation must and doeth have powers separate and distinct from the light or spirit within. These are placed within thee for thy government upon earth. And as thou doest govern the essences within, so in the future thou shalt govern the effects, or bodies and worlds without. Thus thou seest that being in the image of God hath indeed deep meaning. He createth all and knoweth all, and if thou wouldst learn of that which must elevate thee in his sight and in his light, ask and thou wilt receive. Thou know that light removeth darkness, and if you encourage the darker powers, you must be removed far from the Father and thy high place in heaven. Thou art to overcome darkness as thy Father in his creation, and thus prove thyself to be indeed a worthy child. Thy Father will not trust thee to rule others if thou canst not perfectly rule thyself. And he sees thee as thou art. Thou mayest deceive the blind and silly brother by professions, but unto God thou art visible and naked. To rule thyself, thou must attract the attributes of God, the eternal ruler. He loveth thee with a perfect love. His love was used in thy creation, and hence cannot be used to annihilate thee and thy powers. Thou canst obey or disobey, love or hate, yet art at last responsible for thy inheritance. He giveth thee control of error by planting within thee the essences of truth. Thou must use his attributes to live, and in living repay him for the use thereof. Imperfection cannot give perfect judgment. The perfection of love in man is charity. The perfection of love to God is a firm reliance upon him. He is purely charitable unto all his children who should imitate him in charity. Greatness and simplicity are inseparably connected. Simplicity is as necessary unto true greatness as is charity unto love. If thou wouldest be a faithful follower of God, be simple in thy ways, and let love shed around thy pathway its holy fruit. As hath been said, thou must feel these seasons of depression. Thou must know the opposite of light in order to fully know its sweetness. O man, when wilt thou believe the mighty truths among which thou movest are all within thy power of comprehension? When wilt thou look at effect as a demonstration of cause, and all causes but as a demonstration of the power of the good creator of them? Thou canst never successfully search for the inner cause among the outer effects, for the current is against thee. The light floweth out, and thou art striving to enter in opposition to it. Thy spiritual being is the real and true existence, and this should now develop to its fullest capacity. If thy spirit be not fed and clothed with the proper food and clothing, it cannot enter the future existence capable of understanding its power, and this ignorance holdeth it back. Of what avail is comeliness of the body unto a deformed spirit? Learn to act unto man as though thy heavenly Father was beside thee, and though man receiveth thy action, yet for God doeth thou act. Learn to expect reward only from God, and thou wilt never be disappointed. Thou mayest think thou art not rewarded, but thy thoughts do not regulate deity. Couldst thou be induced to open thy spiritual eyes and see and understand the holiness and purity of the good Father, thou wouldest indeed by humility before him take the first step unto true knowledge. God is not hindered as thou by time and distance. Everywhere, at all times, can he be. His power is unlimited. If thou doest sincerely desire his presence, can he not come? Canst thou in desire surpass the bounty which gave thee the power of thyself to desire? Then do not heedlessly walk the earth, imagining that thy Father in heaven is at a great distance, because unseen by thee. What thou canst comprehend, strive to apply rightfully, and thou wilt need few teachers. All the creation is but the evidence that God, in whose man's mind was created, how utterly impossible is it for thought to die or escape the sight of God. Thought unto God is as visible as the earth or the largest and most brilliant body in space. Unto a limited comprehension it seemeth strange that one being can be at all times in all places. And the more limited, the more strange. It hath been proven that deity cannot create that which is beyond his power or control. Harmony is the fruit of God, and not God of harmony. All things emanate from deity. Do not draw the erroneous conclusion that all things united produce God. Thou doest exist, thou didst not produce thyself. Therefore acknowledge thy weakness and the supreme power whose fruit thou art. Thought created and existed around its creation, and thou doest attract pure and holy thoughts. So will they come and dwell around thee. Yet, if thou attract unholy thoughts, thy brain become deadened, and will not vibrate unto the strain sung by the holy ones. The door of heaven or happiness serene is never closed against thee. And if thou doest become an instrument upon which thought and purity can play, thou wilt be an honest and truthful child of God. High thoughts will descend from heaven and circle round thee as brilliant rays of light, this light descends from heaven. It quickens thy brain, loosens thy tongue, and from thy mouth sendeth forth streams of living wisdom, couched in lovely language unto the astonished multitude. Thy heavenly Father satisfies every desire unto thee. Doeth God send trials to develop thee? Thou art in the light and the dark. Thou learnest from thy own experience how to master them and guide their influence. True knowledge must always illustrate God's power on earth. True knowledge consisteth in the comprehension of thy connection with God, thy fellow man, and the creation of which thou art part. Thus thou seest that the first true thought would be of God, the great originator of thy power to think, his due recompense and return for thy privilege. When thou thinkest of man, let it be to raise him, and thus glorify thy Maker when of his creation. Let it be to search for outward proof of his love and harmony. Of God thou canst know but little while on this footstool, for thereon thou art very limited compared unto the height thou wilt in the glorious future attain. Yet, O strive to comprehend his ways, for in the striving thou art exalted. Strive to understand thy connection with him, and thou wilt learn of privileges bestowed upon thee, his child, of which thy most enraptured imaginations fall far short. O seek his communion, seek to counsel with God thy Father, and all that can benefit or give happiness unto thy spirit will in pure love and perfect charity be given. Thy little child hath a hard task. Its little spirit wearies under the weight. It cannot unaided proceed, and with the perfect trustfulness it asks thee for help, and thou canst not refuse. Is not God thy Father? Is he not more loving than thou art? And can he not give more perfect gifts, and more willingly bestow favor than thou? O then, as thou art imperfect, yet loveth so fondly, what must be that perfect love which dwelleth within the Spirit of God? Wouldst thou not sooner suffer than to have thy child in pain? Wouldst thou not sooner bestow favor upon it than be favored? O then, believe what thou doest experience to be but a result of the same pleasure, the same powers within thy Father's Spirit. O then, in view of these things, do thou seek communion with thy Father, even in the confidence with which thy child seeketh thee. And thou wilt learn wisdom from his own lips in purity, beginning thus at the fountain. Thou canst float safely down the tide of true knowledge, stopping ever and anon to examine some truth whose lovely simplicity had heretofore escaped thy observation. All things will seem unto thy spirit much plainer and much more simple than thou hast ever imagined. Thou wilt be astonished at the simplicity of causes whence all effects come. Thou wilt see them branching off in all directions from the parent cause, as the grain from a single germ, and in abundant effects fill full the demand of the ever-acting cause. In man thou wilt see beauties of which thou wert before ignorant, and errors which unto thy vision seem most foolish. Thou wilt see him moving on the earth as one grand connecting link between God and his creation below. His spirit of heaven, his body of earth, his mind an instrument played upon by the one and composed of the most refined particles of the other. Thus, when earthly things are before him, the mind with its governing reason can act almost independent of the refined spirit. But when he searches in the heavens, then the Spirit calleth for help from above, knowing full well that plodding reason would become concludes chapter 4 of the 1855 book, Healing of the Nations, published by the Society for Spiritual Knowledge.